Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the most visible and immediate of the consequences of Brexit and how the architects of Brexit continue to try and keep it invisible from as many people as possibly, namely the huge reduction in trade now possible between Britain and all of our neighbours. You know, those lorry problems are now beginning in earnest, and even our Brexit government say that it's only going to get worse. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, what was very clear as soon as it became obvious that the Brexit that was going to be delivered would not be the one promised, namely access to the single market and no disruption to trade, it also became obvious that there would not be any way to trade as easily as we did as EU members. And that meant not trading as much as we could do. Now, with so much of our trading goods being carried via lorry between the UK and the EU, that meant delays at the border as checks were carried out. Naturally, checks take time to complete, even if there are digital aids to shorten the process. So in this country, we have a system whereby lorry drivers are supposed to have all the paperwork sorted out before they get to the port so that they can just be then funneled one way or the other. You know, the process is still there, however. That process of checks is still there. And if we tried to get the 10,000 lorries a day through Dover, for example, that is not uncommon at certain times of the year, including winter, then we would, of course, see very long tailbacks. And the government's response to this, they built the lorry parks to hold these lorries and keep the tailbacks off the roads of Kent, where they would be otherwise disrupting all traffic, not just that trying to get out of the country. And in the weeks leading up to the transition period, there was lots of extra traffic recorded making that trip. In order for businesses to stockpile, there are some businesses that have basically stockpiled about 6 months worth of stuff, so they're golden for now. You know, ahead of Brexit Day. Hauliers also wanted to avoid being anywhere near our busiest ports in those early days, so they made their journeys beforehand where possible. Now, on the first day of Brexit, just over a week ago, the Brexiteers were out in force saying that our Remainer project fear was exposed because we were, where are the tailbacks then? There's no tailbacks. There's no lorries there either. There's the John. Where's the lorries? You know, they tried to say everything was fine, but at a time of year when there are normally thousands of lorries passing through Dover a day, we had a few hundred. The day before Brexit, loads of lorries. The day of Brexit, where's the lorries? We had 500 lorries. One image shows Dover just before Brexit. I mean, just before Brexit Day. One shows it after. And these images are of a largely deserted port, and they've been quite common in the first week. Some of the goods that would have been carried were sent earlier. Like I said, businesses were stockpiling. But then what about goods that can't be stockpiled? If they can't be stored for long, what do you do then? What about foods with shelf life that doesn't last very long? Fresh fruit and vegetables. Oh look, there are shortages of fresh fruit and vegetables in the shops in the UK now. I wonder what caused that. But you could understand the Brexiteers, like John Redwood, from a strategic point of view, trying to say that the Remainers had got it wrong. Absolutely vital tactic for their continued strategy. Because if people start to see that what they called Project Fear was always Project Reality, I mean, what happens when you follow a narrative, you believe a particular side, and then what they said was wrong and the other side were right? You start to listen to the other side. What they absolutely can't afford is for people to stop listening to the populace and start listening, you know, to the experts. You know, this extra from a mummy film wants people to still listen to him. And it's in this vein that we need to see his latest comments, because Redwood's initial comment was, of course, just a distraction. Very few people live around these ports, and so the general public will only hear of major disruption from reports. Redwood was still trying to harden people's minds against this so-called disruption so that when it does begin, when it's genuine, people can still deny it, because you sort of say, well, once it's real and when we can show people, it'll be undeniable. He's trying to get in some people's minds this to accept it as a universal truth that it doesn't exist. And what we need to do is, you know, we need to ask, what are causing these images of this empty port then? Ask the Brexiteers. So where are all the lorries then? If there's no problems, where are the lorries? But, you know, a week later, he's still saying the same thing, except at this time it's more worrying because you can understand reduced traffic. I mean, think about when Brexit Day was, New Year's Day. Oh, so it's a bank holiday, you'd have reduced traffic anyway. And then it's leading into a weekend, reduced traffic. But why are we still, over that first week, still seeing times of day when there were no lorries at all? Not just reduced. You can actually, I mean, that image is of a time during the week, on a weekday, there's nothing there. Nothing at all. And that's not to say there's still no disruption. There are times when there are lorries there. And bear in mind, there's lorry parks again. You know, so again, why are they being built? Because they're needed. Not just, they weren't a contingency, they are needed. And they are in use right now. Except the government can't even get that right. So, I mean, last year we saw their general incompetence as they tried to build one of the really big lorry parks on a floodplain and then seemed surprised when it got flooded, delaying construction by months. Well, their incompetence has found a new outlet now. We saw local Kent reporting noting that lorries had been diverting themselves to the lorry, or they'd intended to divert themselves to the lorry parks, but quite a lot of them were crashing through a Kent village called Mersham. The reason? The government gave them the wrong address. Here's the postcode for the lorry park you need to go to, they said. They gave them the wrong postcodes, and now the sat-navs had dozens of lorries driving through a little village. Little villages tend not to have roads and structures that are really designed to have loads of lorries crashing through them. One local was describing a load of these lorries ending up getting stuck on a dead-end lane. So yes, in order to stop the lorries backing up the motorway, which is the natural home for a lorry, why not send them to block up a local village? But the likes of Redwood were, even at this point, even at the point where we're having to divert the lorries to the lorry parks, still saying that there was no disruption to trade. You know, I mean, we still don't have the same volume of traffic, as far as I can tell. Numbers, there's a little bit of lag on the numbers, of course, but the disruption is undeniable. You know, as are the cock-ups in managing those delays. Government Minister Michael Gove even said there was going to be significant additional disruption over the coming weeks. Government aren't denying it. And he said, especially at the crossing between Dover and Calais. So it's not exclusively just there, but especially there, it's our largest port. And yet Redwood continues to deny it. Why? The answer to that is the same answer to why any of these charlatans tell lies in the face of definitive proof to the contrary. Because you can look at a politician telling a lie and you go, well, we've got the proof right here. Who are you trying to kid? Who they're trying to fool are not the people paying attention. They know that's not possible. That's fine. They're okay with that. They're just trying to fool some people. There are no negative consequences for their lies. None at all. So they tell them in the hope that anyone at all believes them. It's not actually a big deal for them if no one does. Obviously, they want people to. But where's the harm in telling the lies anyway? Nothing happens to them. Like I said, the vast majority of us will have no idea what's going on at Dover if it weren't for reports. And because most people don't seek out reports, they're happy to have a source of information that they regard as gospel, and that's all there is to it. Brexiteers like Redwood are just trying to keep enough people in the dark for long enough that the lie sticks. So when people try to show them proof, or when the proof mounts up, this universal truth in their own heads is so fixed in their minds that they'll dismiss it. There'll be ludicrous ways used to dismiss it, but they'll do it. We've seen that people can delude themselves in the most ridiculous way. You know, there have already been cock-ups. Tens of thousands of pounds worth of fines have been issued to lorry drivers already due to our unnecessary system for blocking trade between ourselves and our neighbours. Because that's what this is. It's a system to block trade with Britain. Haulage experts know that this next week is going to be chaos. In order to continue supplies of vital medicines, we've had to set up an air corridor. Oh, well, that's fine then, the Brexit supporters might say. Well, that solves the problem, doesn't it? We just fly it in. No problem, we're getting the medicines. Well, no, it doesn't solve the problem. Because there's a reason why we don't normally use that method of haulage much. It's very expensive. So in getting medicines into the country, we're now having to use a much more expensive system. Well, that means much greater costs for these medicines. That means the NHS will not be able to afford to buy as much of it. So some will have to do without effective treatments because the NHS has run out of money. Because, and this may come as a shock to some people, Boris Johnson hasn't actually given the NHS an extra £350 million a week. We are seeing reports of there being nowhere near enough customs officials to carry out the work from the government side either. Gove boasted about hiring 50,000 new bureaucrats, but was never able to say how many he'd actually hired and trained. You know, he was asked, so how many have we now got? You say we're going to get 50,000 more. How many have we got? Every time he was asked, he didn't have the figures on him. This is probably because we've got about a dozen. I mean, I don't know. What I do know is we definitely don't have 50,000. Otherwise, he'd be happy to say we've got 50,000 because that's what I said we'd get. And bear in mind that the disruption that is happening right now and only set to increase according to a Brexit government minister is being suppressed because we are unlawfully not carrying out checks on goods entering the UK. All the checks are on the way out. Absolute window of opportunity for smugglers. But our plan is to apply those checks from July. Once we've got more lorry parks, we're waiting for more lorry parks to hold the trucks that are going nowhere due to our Brexit madness. At the moment, we can't actually have enough lorries stuck doing nothing to actually do checks in both directions. That's the disruption. The bottom line is we'll never see the sort of traffic that we had before again. How can we? Because if that many lorries tried to use our ports again, they would be queuing for days. Like we've said for a while, it's not worth it for lorry drivers. You know, they can't afford to be stuck for days. The reality is that Britain is just going to have to trade less. If you can't find other routes, like Ireland, for example, found another route to bypass Holyhead, for example, and avoid using the land bridge. But in Britain, we can't avoid using Britain as a trade route, so we're just going to have to trade less. You know, we're still going to have that disruption, you know, for the much less trade that we can manage. Indeed, that loss of trade has already happened because we've already seen businesses on both sides of the Brexit border making decisions not to try and trade across that Brexit border anymore because it's too much hassle. The imperative now is to keep showing people what is happening so that they don't keep falling for the obvious lies. It was bad enough when Brexit was, in some people's minds at any rate, speculation, or you don't really know what's going to happen. Well, it's here now. It's happened. We can't afford to countenance any more denials. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.